Like to talk about evaluation for a moment. There's two types, formative and summative. Summative happens at the end when work stops, that's why I have it in red, and formative happens in the middle when work can be changed, and that's why that's in green. Summative evaluation can be given by an authority figure, like if you're submitting your work for licensure or a student is submitting their work to a teacher, or by an end user, such as you may be giving me at the end of this course to tell me how well it worked for you. Formative evaluation can be given by an authority, again, when a teacher is telling you what's going to be needed to happen before you submit your work, by a guide who is saying, I think your work could be better in these areas, or is doing fine in these areas, a peer who's someone like you being given the same work, or a user, somebody who your work is designed for. Let's look at peer evaluation in particular. There's three models I like to look at. Pair, when students are paired up to evaluate each other. Quad, when you have a group of students together, in this case 4. Or team, when the entire class is giving peer feedback on each other's work. Now, quad feedback could happen as embedded feedback, meaning that the other 3 students are putting information in the actual document that you've given them to evaluate, like a Google Doc, using document comments. A feedback instrument, which means they could be filling out a rubric or even a Google form and submitting that to you for your own feedback, or face-to-face feedback. Now for our course, we're going to be relying on feedback instruments or embedded feedback, and that's going to be up to each quad to determine. So I'm going to use Google Classroom as an example of how to organize peer review with quad teams. Now, if this were student view, you'd see a Turnitin tab, and your first task would be to attach a Google slide that you made as your submission to the assignment. Your course mentor, who is going to be looking for the assignments submitted by each of the 4 members of their peer review team, will, when he sees all 4, send an email out to everyone with links to those 4 assignments that give people the ability to comment on them, not alter them in any way, but comment on them. At that point, when you receive that email, your task is to use a rubric to evaluate those slides and decide what feedback you want to give to the author of them. Now, your feedback could be done in method 1, which means on a separate rubric which you grade for them, or method 2, where you just look at a rubric but you add your comments embedded into the slide or document or whatever it is itself. Now, method 2's advantage is that the person gets much better targeted feedback because it's right in the places where it belongs, but the advantage of method 1 is that not only do you get a separate rubric that you can track about your feedback, but also that rubric could be shared with the course mentor or the teacher, who can then see what kind of feedback students are giving to each other. So my preference is for method 1, but it's a little more complicated. Method 2 might be something you prefer. After you receive either the comments on your document or your guided rubric, you then rework your slides and then resubmit them to the teacher. Although for our course, since there is no grading, there's no resubmission, and the main point is getting the feedback from your peers. Let's take a look at these 2 rubrics. Now, method 2's rubric is very simple. It's just a standard rubric with the criteria on the left and levels on the top, and your goal is for mastery on all of the levels. This would be a fairly easy thing to apply to a slide. There's not too many boxes to think about, and only 5 criteria. I think anything more than 5 criteria gets overwhelming, and really 3 criteria is ideal. Now, if we go to method 1, you as the reviewer will make a copy of this rubric. You'd indicate who the author was. So if Sally made the slide, you'd write her name, and then you'd indicate your name so she knows who's reviewing her. And then you would actually link to the slide here. Now you're getting that link from your course mentor or from your teacher, whoever is sharing that work with you. It could be Sally giving you that link herself. But you want to make sure for this rubric that you've included the link to the work so that if somebody else goes to this rubric, they can find it. And whenever you highlight something, you can then write a link. Now this is your standard issue rubric, except on the right-hand side we have a place to put points. So let's assume that you looked at Sally's work and you had a problem with her graphics because she put these little waving American flag GIFs in them. And you don't like that, so you tell her that gratuitous American flags are distracting. She can see that there's a comment because of that little corner dot there. Just to show you how you make a comment, let's say I also have a problem with the writing mechanics because there she used it's wrong, so I'll say insert comment, and we'll say it's is not its comment. I'm an English teacher, so you can tell I like saying things like that. Anyway, so now Sally knows that she just got a 17, which would be an 85. Now, as a peer, you may not really want to worry about giving people numeric grades, but maybe people care about them in your class. And if you think Sally did a particularly wonderful job with her graphics and went above and beyond, you might want to give her a few extra points. Maybe the teacher will too. So that's how you then give that feedback. Now, what do you do at this point if you're using this method? You're going to share this rubric with Sally. Now you're also going to share this rubric with the course mentor so that they know that you've done this piece of the work. If you used method 1, then Sally will get a copy of the rubric and she can apply what changes you indicated to her work. If you've used method 2, Sally will get an email about the comments that have been added to her work. She'll make some changes to it. She would generally resubmit her work, but because in our class there are no grades being given, this is just an opportunity to see if you can benefit from peer feedback and use Google tools to do that. As a teacher, you can then decide which of these methods works best for your classroom.